Hello, what you're looking at here is a slide produced by another person who's obviously built a number of these cars, relating to issues with the front radiator. And in essence, the problem is with the radiator vertical, this piece here hits this piece here, which means that this piece doesn't go far back enough. And that's an issue. And the solutions that are around to deal with this I will talk about in this video, and I will discuss my solution to what I call the radiator problem. So regarding the radiator, well, if you look at this component, this one is in the correct position, the radiator is fixed in the correct position, and this little component should be sitting on the top of the radiator, around about there, so that when you can screw in the radiator cap. But if you look at it, the back of the radiator is way down, is way towards the front of the car. And this apparently is a well-known problem, and a number of solutions have been put forward to resolve that. So I'm just going to take this off. Oops. And in the video that in the slide pack that I've got, which talks about this problem, there are 3 solutions that are put forward. The first solution actually is to move the entire engine back by 10 millimeters, so that this can be leaned over. Right. So basically, rather than putting the radiator in it vertical, you lean it back so that the back end of the radiator is about 10 millimeters, and then that will create the gap to allow this small component to actually appear in the slot in there. There's this, now you can imagine moving the engine back 10 millimeters affects the rear axle. You've got to put new bolt holes in. The steering box is actually attached to the engine, so it impacts the steering box as well. So quite a few knock-on effects. The second solution I've seen is that you simply just force that back 5 millimeters till it hits the engine, and bend this up and just accept it as it falls, as it were, which again is far from a satisfactory solution. And the third option I've seen is, well, forget the radiator, don't even bother to to install it in some respects, although you need it to hold the. There's a bar goes between here and here, which helps the bonnet sit right. But one solution is, well, just forget it. Take this, put a piece of plastic in it, and basically fix that on a bit of plastic stuck to the back of here, so that when it's sitting way over on the radiator, basically it doesn't impact the radiator, which I thought, none of which are really good solutions as it happens. And then there's another complication. This radiator is so wide that it catches on the little screws that you hold to hold these components on. So you have to put them in and screw them down. And of course, in my wisdom, what I've decided to do is not to use the little 2 millimeter screws, but to actually use nuts and bolts. So I've got nuts and bolts on here, and I file these down as much as I can. And you can probably see on the body, you can see on the radiator how it catches the radiator. So again, not very practical. And then of course you discover another problem, which is the radiator eventually hits the front of this. As you push this back, it hits this, mostly around the top. So you're actually pushing the radiator back anyway, just to get this in its proper position. And it's important because this is supporting the front bonnet, so this is pretty critical. I'm also working on the issue of how do I drop this, because this is too big. But in this video, I'm going to concentrate on the radiator and the problems. So I've decided this radiator isn't good enough, and I've reverted to plan A. So my plan A was to redesign the radiator, and this is the first iteration. And as you can see, what I've done is I've extended the top end of the radiator. It's not unusual actually for some of the older radiators to increase the volume of water in the system. They would put a big header tank on top of the radiator. So that's my proposed solution. This was the very first prototype that I made. I've made this exactly the same height as the original radiator, but I've actually made it 2 millimeters narrower. So it's an undersized device and it fits better into the car. So that was iteration 1, which was like concept proving. I then went on and did a second unit. So this is the second unit, and I designed all of the connections and holes, etc., that are necessary in the radiator. And not a very good print, this one, because it didn't stick very well, so I had to go away and sort out the printer. And I also decided, you'll never see this side, because that's behind this body, whereas you will see this side. So the third iteration was to get this, that's this one, was to basically, as you can see, put a fake grill on it, and that was going to be the finished product until I came to fit it into the car. And then what I discovered was this actually is catches before it gets into position. It's catching this curve on the body, so you can see that curve in there. And this being nice and square actually catches up on it. So it prevents this component from being fitted properly once installed. So the final iteration was to take that back piece and to make it curved. Actually, that's the wrong piece. This is the piece. So you see I put a curve on the edges, put a curve on the top. The first one of these that I did actually was very thin along that line, so I had to then modify the inside of this to put a chamfer there, which just puts enough material in so that it can support, so it's correct support. You'll see I've also put supports down the side and along the bottom, and it's not that obvious, but this piece, this little piece here, which slots into the bracket on the car, I had to make that a little bit thinner. It was sitting about 1.5 millimeters, and it needed to be 1 millimeter to slide into the slots. So that's the other thing I did was I put this, I raised the inside a little bit so that when that goes on there, it actually clips in quite nicely. So that's my solution. You can see this little piece, rather than sitting on the front of the radiator, now sits right at the back, and that clears this component, and it slides in really nicely and sits really nicely. So I'm hoping I don't have to change this. I've still got this issue of dropping this component a little bit. So I've got, this has got to be dropped in the car to fit properly. And if the worst comes to the worst, I might have to make the radiator 2 millimeters shorter, I guess, if it starts to obstruct on this front component. But that's my solution to what I didn't realise, but in fact is a very well-known problem with this particular kit. I hope you think it's quite an elegant solution. And just for completeness, I've fitted that brass component into the slots. You can see there's a little bit of movement, but what I'll do is I'll glue that in when I've got further down the construction route. I guess if there's one piece of advice I'd give to people in this car is test fit everything, put it together, take it apart, put the engine in, take the engine out. But that's the only way really to find the issues, and there are a number of issues with this kit, and address them. So putting glue on anything is the last thing I'm inclined to do at this point in time.